In the headlines, President Park Geun-hye stresses the need to revamp the country's pension system for public workers amid political wrangling over reform terms. Korea slams Japan for its attempts to list its Meiji industrial facilities, a symbol of its forced labor of many Koreans during Japan's colonial rule, as a World Heritage Site. A growing number of senior citizens in Korea are growing independent from their children, but not feeling so independent financially. Welcome to Primetime News on this Tuesday, March 31st. Live from Seoul, I am Kang, Chery.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us for the top stories this hour. We begin with the efforts to resolve the decades-long deficit in the public pension system, with the reform drive topping Korea's political agenda this week.
President Park Geun-hye stressed the need to create a sustainable retirement system for public servants, but political discord at the National Assembly continues. Our Park Ji-won has more.
Korea's pension plan for public servants has been in deficit since the mid-1990s, with shortages filled by taxes. To address this pressing matter, President Park Geun-hye, speaking at Tuesday's cabinet meeting, called on the National Assembly to urgently address these public servant pension reforms for the future of the country.
국회가 시한 내에 이 연금 개혁을 마무리 짓지 못하면 내년부터는 매일 100억 원씩 연간 3조 7천억 원의 세금이 들어가야 하고.
President Park stressed that these reforms should be carried out in a way that efficiently reduces the government budget, but also demonstrates fairness and sustainability to Koreans. Both political parties previously agreed to pass the reform plan at the full assembly on May 2nd. However, on Tuesday, they failed to form a working group for negotiations on the reforms.
The main opposition has been saying that they have strengths in economic affairs. But I'd like to ask them how they can say such things when they drag on and oppose the pension reforms.
It is unacceptable that the government tries to get through the reforms with the ruling party leading the process, with a limited deadline just like a military operation. The reforms should be proactively led by the government, like labor management negotiations.
Meanwhile, public sector unions said they will not participate at the negotiating table if the May 2nd deadline is upheld. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
April is expected to be a crucial time for the Korean economy. As we mentioned earlier in the program, major reforms to the civil pension system and the minimum wage have been on the negotiating table for months now, with time running out to gain momentum for a full-fledged economic recovery. Our Son Jang-in tells us more.
The government is aiming to pull the nation out of the sluggish economy through structural reform in 4 major areas: the public sector, labor, finance, and education, while boosting domestic consumption to revive the economy. However, in April, policymakers will have to come to agreement on the process of reforming the civil servant pension system and on ways to revamp the overall labor market structure. A full-fledged negotiation on minimum wage is also set for next month, amid pressure from the government to raise the salary to increase overall household income. Deputy Prime Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has repeatedly stressed that April is a critical time for accomplishing the reforms. He promised tangible results by the end of the month. It won't be easy. Structural reform itself is a complicated task. It gets even more challenging when the administration, lawmakers, and unions can't find common ground. Questions also remain about whether the National Assembly will be able to pass 9 pending bills on economic revitalization during a month-long provisional session set to begin April 7th. With economic uncertainty still lingering, insiders say the Korean economic landscape will be shaped by the outcome of these structural reform efforts over the next month. Son Jang-in, Arirang News.
Korea's industrial output rose at the fastest pace in nearly 4 years last month, but the rise came largely from temporary factors, so questions still linger over the health of the nation's economic recovery. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the figures.
February was bullish, with production across all industries in Korea going up by 2.5% from the previous month. That marks a rebound from a 2% drop in January and the biggest monthly hike since March 2011. But when taking a look at the underlying trend of figures, it's not all rosy.
The pickup came from a low base effect in January and a rise in demand thanks to the Lunar New Year holiday that fell in February this year. It's better to average the output growth for the first 2 months, as the holiday sometimes falls in January.
The Finance Ministry also says that the output figure for all of January and February rose a mere 0.1% compared to the fourth quarter last year, pointing to a still fragile recovery momentum. Given that attention is now focused on the March figures, will they back up a solid growth trend or remain sluggish, making it more difficult for economic policymakers to prop up the ailing economy?
Whether the figures for exports, investment, and consumption improve in March will help determine the pace of recovery.
The Finance Ministry, however, expects the trend of low oil prices and the low key rate to benefit the economy, gradually strengthening Korea's recovery momentum. By sector, output in mining and manufacturing went up 2.6% in February from the previous month, thanks to strong demand for automobiles and semiconductors. Service sector output rose 1.6%, while retail sales spiked nearly 3%. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
High-profile Korean tech companies, Samsung and LG Group, have called for a truce and agreed to stop all legal disputes among their group affiliates. The decision resolves 5 conflicts, including a battle over an alleged act of vandalism by LG employees. Samsung accused LG of deliberately wrecking its washing machines at the Germany-based IFA Electronics Show last September. In response, LG filed a charge against Samsung for technology theft of its organic light-emitting diode technologies. Specific details on how the agreement was reached were not disclosed, but the two conglomerates said they'll avoid lawsuits and settle differences through dialogue in the future.
South Korea has slammed Japan for its attempts to list its Meiji industrial facilities as a World Heritage Site. That's because these facilities were the sites where many Koreans were forced to labor under Japan's colonial rule in the early 1900s. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
Korea has reiterated its opposition to the possible listing of a group of Japanese industrial facilities on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Seoul's foreign ministry said Tuesday that the Meiji industrial sites, where tens of thousands of Koreans were forced to work under Japanese rule in the early 1900s, should not be recognized as intangible cultural assets.
To list these facilities, with their painful history of forced labor for Koreans under Japan's colonial rule, as a World Heritage Site does not correspond with the discipline and purpose of UNESCO.
However, there are reports that the International Council on Monuments and Sites, or ICOMOS, said Japan's industrial facilities are qualified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, upping Tokyo's chances. ICOMOS, a non-government advisory body for UNESCO, held 2 rounds of meetings last December and this month to review the applications for new World Heritage listings. For Japan, the 28 sites, mainly located in Kyushu, are proud relics from its Meiji Industrial Revolution. For Korea, they are painful reminders of Japan's colonial rule. The final verdict will be released at the 39th session of the World Heritage Committee in Germany this summer. 21 member countries, including Korea and Japan, will vote on the issue. The sites need at least 2/3 of the votes to be approved. And until then, the foreign ministry here in Seoul says it will continue its efforts to prevent the Japanese sites from receiving UNESCO recognition. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Washington's Defense Chief Ashton Carter is due in South Korea next week for talks with his top South Korean officials. The agenda is said to be focused on the threat posed by North Korea, but there is still speculation that Carter will want to talk about deploying a controversial U.S. missile defense system to South Korea. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter is scheduled to visit Seoul for the first time next week for talks with his South Korean counterpart, Han Min-gu. A South Korean government source says Carter will arrive for a two-day visit starting April 9th. During his talks with Han and President Park Geun-hye, Carter is expected to discuss ways to better deal with North Korean issues and to boost the two countries' military alliance. But the main focus is on whether the deployment to South Korea of a U.S. missile defense system called THAAD will be on the agenda.
Since THAAD is a hot issue, it looks unlikely it will be formally mentioned, but there's a high possibility it could be discussed informally on the side.
It's an issue that has stirred controversy both at home and abroad, with China and Russia both expressing their strongly opposition to it. Carter is known to be a strong advocate of the THAAD system. During his confirmation hearing in February, he emphasized the need to beef up missile defense, calling North Korea's ballistic missile capabilities a direct threat to the United States and South Korea. Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, who was in Seoul last week, said he had productive discussions with his South Korean counterpart, Chery, about building an integrated air and missile defense system in South Korea. Officials in Seoul say that did not come up during their discussion. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye has tried to dismiss concerns that South Korea is stuck between the world's two superpowers in terms of its foreign policy. During a luncheon with her officials Tuesday, she was quoted as saying that one does not need to worry about Seoul being caught in the middle of Washington and Beijing when referring to South Korea's decision to join a China-led regional bank and a pending decision to bring in a U.S. missile defense system called THAAD. She reportedly added that South Korea makes such decisions based on a pool of information and with dignity.
Many Korean senior citizens 65 or older say they're not living with their children, but they're not receiving any financial help from them either. And that's raising questions over whether the government is ready to handle the rapidly aging population. Shin Se-min explains.
Nearly 15% of the Korea's population is 65 or older, a sign that the country is on the path to becoming a senior society. But instead of feeling more independent, many seniors are growing insecure. Korea's welfare ministry said Tuesday that 7 out of 10 seniors are either living with their spouse or on their own without any help from their children. A survey last year of nearly 10,500 seniors by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs also showed 3 in 10 were working post-retirement to support daily living costs. This is raising questions about whether there's enough government support for the country's rapidly aging population. But some experts say the problem stems from traditional customs.
Unlike many Western countries, most Korean parents support their children through college and even till they get married. So while the parents or the elderly in this case are economically active, they aren't saving as much for their age years, eventually forced to make more even when they're old.
Chung added that government initiatives to help seniors should improve, like broadening the reach of pension programs. Meanwhile, younger generations should start saving up earlier to lighten the load for their parents and give them more opportunity to save for their golden years. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea has been joining the global trend of encouraging smokers to kick the habit. Previously, people were allowed to light up in small-sized shops, but starting this Wednesday, smoking will be banned in all restaurants, cafes, and shops. Kim Ji-yeon has the story.
Smoking will be prohibited in all restaurants, coffee shops, internet rooms, and cafes in Korea starting next month. Those caught violating the rule will be subject to a penalty. The smoker will be charged up to $90, and the proprietor could be fined $1,500. Local authorities say they strengthened the restriction after giving businesses a 3-month grace period this year. Small-sized shops less than 100 square meters in width were initially exempt from the restriction, but are now subject to the rule. Shops are banned from running smoking areas, but smoking booths are still permitted, though customers inside them can't be served food or drinks. And this governmental health initiative seems to be working. The Ministry of Health and Welfare says the number of people enrolled in non-smoking clinics shot up this year. Nearly 262,000 applicants signed up between January and March 20th, 3 times more than the same period last year. But the ministry says it will be 6 months before it can determine if the number of smokers has truly declined. That's when a clinic participant can be classified as a non-smoker. Last year, around 44% of those who enrolled in clinics indicated that they stopped smoking for more than 6 months. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
With just hours left before Tuesday's deadline, top delegations are holding last-minute talks in Switzerland on Iran's nuclear program.
With more, we turn to Paul Yi at the News Center. Paul, this critical meeting may decide the fate of Tehran's future with the international community. Any indications of a breakthrough?
Well, despite a lot of talk of optimism, there's been no signs of any significant progress. The 7 foreign ministers have been locked in marathon negotiations, which even took them through the night. Iran, the UN Security Council countries, and Germany now have less than 8 hours, or rather 9 hours, that is, to arrive at a political framework. This would suspend some of Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for the partial lifting of economic sanctions. Speaking from Lausanne, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said challenges still remained.
Those marathon-like negotiations have reached the final stage. 7 foreign ministers have gathered here to sum up all the achievements we've made so far, as well as key problems demanding to be settled. We are working towards methods and ways to solving those problems.
World powers are seeking to ensure Iran will not have the means to develop a nuclear bomb for at least 10 years. Even if a deal is reached by the Tuesday deadline, officials say it could still fall apart when the two sides attempt to agree on technical details on a comprehensive accord later in June. And turning to Nigeria, the final results of the country's presidential vote are being called into question after the head of the Election Commission was accused of bias. Moments before the final batch of results were to be announced in Abuja, the official for incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan disrupted the proceedings. He accused authorities of failing to address complaints of voting irregularities. The chairman of the Electoral Commission rejected the claim.
As I speak with you now, I have not received anything from the Secretary to the Commission. That is with regards to the issue of the so-called petition. With regards to what you said about results published by, allegedly published by APC on its website, I do not give results to anybody. The results we announce formally as INEC are results that are declared here.
The opposition candidate, Muhammadu Buhari, is reportedly leading by a wide margin. He is expected to win the landmark election in Africa's most populous nation. This as the government faces huge challenges ahead, including widespread corruption and the growing threat from Boko Haram militants. Switching gears to the latest industry news, famed billionaire Elon Musk is creating a frenzy on Wall Street, this time with only a single tweet. The 43-year-old's Twitter feed went viral on Monday. He said he was very optimistic about Tesla's long-term future in China, despite what he called earlier mistakes. Musk founded the electric car maker in 2003 and currently serves as CEO. He also tweeted about plans to unveil a major new product line from Tesla on April 30th, but said it would not be a vehicle. That statement has investors speculating of a new battery storage technology to power the next generation of homes. It also pushed the country's shares up 3% after trading near its 52-week low earlier in the day. And ending on a lighter note, a wave of the world's biggest stars have come together in launching their own music streaming service called Tidal. Some of the music industry's biggest names were at the launch event in New York on Monday to declare their share of the company. They included Beyoncé, Madonna, Kanye West, and Daft Punk, among others. Alicia Keys, who also announced co-ownership, said it was a start of a whole new era.
Jimi Hendrix once said that music doesn't lie. If there is something to be changed in the world, then it can only happen through music. An overstatement? Maybe. But maybe not. After all, there is truth in the old adage that music makes the world go round. Think about how many times music has truly changed the world and reshaped our culture.
Online users can get access to Tidal by subscribing to a monthly fee. The music and video streaming platform was recently bought by Jay-Z for $54 million. Despite stiff competition, experts say Jay-Z's deep ties to major record labels and other popular artists may just prove to be a winning formula. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Starting at Seoul World Cup Stadium, South Korea and New Zealand clashed in their friendly in wet conditions, and Chaduri officially retired from international play. Now going to the match, Korea had a tough first half against the lower-ranked team with a devastating miss by Son Heung-min from the penalty spot, topping it off. Amid the frustration, Cha was pulled in the 43rd minute to thunderous applause with tears filling his eyes during a ceremony at halftime. Fans will surely miss the Chaminator. Well, the match continued on with Korea more active in the second half, and they were rewarded with an Lee Jae-sung goal with minutes to spare, taking the 1-0 lead to the final whistle and wrapping up International Friendly Week with a win and a draw. Over to pro volleyball, the IBK Altos hosted the Korea Expressway Zenith in the all-important Game 3 of the Women's Championship Series. Now, just a win away from taking it all, the Altos took the reins early in the match and didn't let go. Destiny was great yet again, powering an offense that left the Zenith overwhelmed and without answers. Wrapping up the season, the IBK Altos swept their way to the title, their second in 3 years, and setter Kim Sa-ni taking home the MVP honors. Now to the KBL for Game 2 of the championship finals between the Mobis Phoebus and Dongbu Promi. And Dongbu, down a game and away from home, fought to an 8-point lead by the half. But Mobis came back big in the third to take control of the game going into the final period. There, Mobis finished up strong for the win as Dongbu crumbled. And now they take the 2-0 series lead heading to Wonju on Thursday. Leaving all of that there, let's talk baseball. The 0-2 LG Twins took on the 2-0 Lotte Giants for the Twins' home opener in Seoul. And the Twins sent out Lucas Harrell to the mound, the Giants' Josh Lindblom. And no scores until the 5th inning when Lotte took advantage of the bases-loaded situation to bring in 4 runs. Then off to the next inning, Hwang Jae-gyun blasted a 3-run shot, putting Lotte up by 6. Now rain ended it early, but that was all Lotte needed, winning 7-1 to start the season with 3 wins. Elsewhere in the country, Samsung beat KT 8-6, while the remaining 3 games were rained out. And that wraps it up for sports. Your weather's up next. Good night.
Hello Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather outlook. Be careful out on the roads because foggy conditions are limiting visibility, which is down at 300 meters over in Incheon. Also, at the moment, light showers are falling in most parts of the country, and it looks like another 10 millimeters will fall over in Jeju, and other regions should expect less than 5. And conditions will gradually clear up by tomorrow morning. Other than that, Wednesday is shaping up to be another warm day with daytime highs peaking from between 9 to 21 degrees, but be aware of the big gap in numbers from day to night. Looking ahead, it looks like more showers are in store for Thursday and Friday, dropping more rain than what we got to see today. On to tomorrow's ratings. Seoul reaches up to 19, Gwangju jumps to 21, Busan hits 16. Moving on to other regions, Tidal and Jeju hit 19, Dokdo hits 10, Mount Kumgang reaches 6. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more in just about 2 hours.
Thank you very much, Bo-kyung, and that's primetime news for this Tuesday. Thanks for watching. I'm Kang Chery.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.